von der Leyen has concluded her visit to China and left. She has gained a great deal from this trip. She received a high-level reception during her exchanges with China and reached important consensuses on promoting China-EU cooperation. Von der Leyen attaches great importance to this visit to China and emphasizes that the summit is an opportunity to advance and rebalance the relationship. Europe currently needs China, and particularly needs China. Although Europe still has to consider the feelings of the United States and take into account the differences between China and Europe, von der Leyen is well aware that cooperating with China is a necessary option. At present, the European Union is under tariff pressure from the United States and also faces huge pressure from the United States in terms of military spending proportion and the purchase of American weapons. At this time, they are more eager to obtain China's support. After getting China's support, von der Leyen took countermeasures against the United States. The European Union's strengthening of trade relations with China has nothing to do with its deteriorating relationship with the United States. This is a statement that von der Leyen made to the United States before leaving China. This is a sincere statement. Von der Leyen directly sent a message to the United States, and in fact, it is also a guarantee to China, reassuring China. She frankly declared that China-EU cooperation does not need to look at the face of the United States, which is to show China that the European Union will develop relations with China independently and will no longer be influenced by the United States in the future. We have always emphasized that Europe should handle its cooperative relations with China based on its own interests, rather than acting in accordance with the demands of the United States. In the past, Europe has never been able to break free from U.S. influence on many issues. It even went so far as to harm its own interests to cooperate with the U.S. in confronting China. During this short one-day trip, the President of the European Commission held intensive talks with China's top leaders. Just before von der Leyen arrived in China, Trump released news stating that he would decide to impose a 15% tariff on the European Union, and emphasized that this is a preferential rate obtained after the EU opened its market to U.S. goods. Faced with pressure from the U.S. side, the EU quickly unified its stance internally, and Germany's attitude underwent a 180-degree shift. They have shifted from advocating consultation for resolution to adopting a tough confrontational stance. Multiple officials spoke out to the U.S. side through the Wall Street Journal, stating that if the United States wants a trade war, they will get their wish. The EU has quietly prepared 3 rounds of countermeasures, covering areas from agricultural products to aircraft, automobiles, and digital services taxes. In particular, the 3rd round of restrictive measures targeting U.S. tech companies shows that the EU has truly reached the limit of its patience this time. To take a tough stance against the United States, the EU must secure China's support, which is the fundamental reason why von der Leyen made harsh remarks to the U.S. The establishment of the EU itself was aimed at breaking free from dependence on and restrictions by the United States. However, neither the formation of the EU nor the launch of the euro has enabled Europe to achieve strategic autonomy or truly act without deferring to the U.S. Von der Leyen has long been seen as a representative of the hardline faction toward China, advocating following the U.S. containment strategy. In contrast, European Council President Costa, who traveled with her, represents the pragmatic cooperation faction, striving to maintain China-EU economic and trade ties. For a hardliner like von der Leyen to undergo such a significant shift, it indicates that the U.S. has truly gone too far, and it also reflects that the entire Europe is now seeking strategic autonomy. France has repeatedly made it clear that European affairs should be decided by Europeans themselves, not by the United States. Emmanuel Macron has promoted the idea of European independence through various means, even calling for the establishment of a European army. Most countries within the EU also advocate breaking free from U.S. restrictions, but this path is destined to be arduous, because the United States will not easily relax its control over the EU. Just as EU leaders von der Leyen and Costa reached important consensuses with China, EU member states quickly approved the retaliatory tariff list proposed by the European Commission to counter U.S. tariffs. In my view, the EU's cooperation with China is based on realistic interests. Perhaps China cannot expect the EU to fully align with it, but if the EU can stand against the United States, China will certainly face much less pressure in the China-US game. Thus, I believe von der Leyen's choice to cooperate with China stems from considerations of practical interests. Although von der Leyen emphasizes that China-EU relations are inherently important and independent of its relations with other countries, she cannot easily break free from US restrictions and constraints. From Macron's push for a European army and Germany's increase in defense budgets, to the Netherlands' tightening of semiconductor export controls and Spain's layout of resource supply chains in Africa, these actions collectively interpret the new connotation of strategic autonomy. However, the fundamental dilemma facing the EU lies in the division between security and economy. On the one hand, it seeks to reduce economic dependence on the US. On the other hand, it still cannot break away from the NATO framework in terms of security. As analysis points out, as long as the EU continues to rely on the United States for its security and defense, it will be difficult to achieve true strategic independence. Of course, regardless of the EU's final choice, the global multipolar pattern has become a foregone conclusion. The era of a single hegemon dominating international relations is coming to an end amid the rifts across the Atlantic.